everyone, it's Shauna from Pay Your Weights, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Chi, Season 2, Episode 2, Every Day I'm Hustling. And so a lot of the characters are definitely hustling in different ways throughout the course of this episode. So for those of you who don't know, I kind of give a recap of the episode along with my review of how I felt about the episode for this week. So if you have not watched yet and you do not want any spoilers, stop, pause, go watch it because they have it already on Hulu. I actually watched it on Hulu. Thank you guys for making these episodes available at midnight because I don't have to choose between The Chi and Game of Thrones. So yes, and make sure you guys come back where I'll actually be doing like a live stream, testing it out while watching tonight's premiere of Game of Thrones, and also to giving you guys a quick review afterwards. And so let's go ahead and get into this week's episode. And so we see that last week's episode ended with poor Miss Ethel, y'all. Somebody beat Miss Ethel down. And so we see that the police are actually investigating her attack, and we see that there is a new detective who's kind of stepping in while we see Detective Cruz returns because he has a relationship with Miss Ethel, no matter how many times she's pointed a gun on him. And so it's not in his jurisdiction because it's not a homicide, and so therefore we know that Miss Ethel, she is still fighting, she's still okay for right now. And so we see that throughout the course of the episode, they're trying to figure out what happened. Were they trying to rob her? Because we saw that they kind of said that there were always some young boys from a gang who were sitting outside always causing a ruckus. And we see that towards the end of the episode, they kind of piece together this has something to do with the 63rd Street mob. And we don't really know what the connection is yet, but we do see that there is a pattern. She is not the only one who has unfortunately been a victim of kind of this home evasion or people breaking in and actually stealing stuff. But in the midst of all of that, I guess we can go ahead and kind of tie this into both Ronnie and Reggie's storyline. So we see that Reggie went to go finally try some of Brandon's tacos, and so essentially he ate them. He left without paying. I was like, so Reggie, you ain't got no money to pay him? Like, you just feel like you should just get free food all the time? But we see as Reggie returns to his car that someone actually pulls a gun on him and tells him that he has 2 days to basically get 100,000 K to basically stop him from being killed. And so we see that his crew is kind of dealing with the death of one of their people, Junie, who actually Jason grew up with. I keep calling him Jason by his real name, who Brandon grew up with as well. And so Reggie comes back to kind of tell his crew what happened, and then he see all of them chilling. He's like, y'all, we got to be about our money. Junie was about his money. We have to be about our money too. We got to hustle. We got 2 days to get 100K. We have to figure things out. And so Reggie is basically trying to figure out all these different ways on how he can get this money once he finds out that they are short, even with their efforts. So they decide to rob someone. And then we're introduced to kind of our new, I guess, villain of the season. Dada, I believe is his name. He was fine, y'all. Hey, Zaddy, okay, I know you are part of like a whole little gang, but still you cute. And so we see throughout the course of the conversation that Reggie is having as he meets him at his like fancy little loft that he has. He pays him his money. He tells him, hey, if this happens again, like it's not going to be you just have to pay me some money and then we're good. But he basically gets to take over from Trice and also to Q. And we learn from this conversation that Q is dead, which is what I assume, because he said he wouldn't be an issue. He had to pay for killing a cop and just causing a lot of unnecessary issues. And so we see that there's kind of this new partnership that has been formed. I don't know how things are going to play out throughout the course of the season with Reggie working with him, and also too now the police is kind of trying to investigate kind of this connection that the 63rd Street mob has. But I'm excited to see how things are going to play out, and I don't mind seeing this little scrumptious little snack on screen for the rest of the season, so I hope he makes it that long. Now, we see that Ronnie was drinking something crazy out the toilet. I said, what is this man drinking out the toilet? So Ronnie comes up with his whole plan on how he's going to go to the little racist people. I don't know what their group is called in prison. And basically he wants to use their lawyer because their lawyer is known for getting people off or getting them deals, no matter what the crime is they have committed. So we see that Ronnie knows about what has happened to his grandmother, Miss Ethel, and he's trying to figure out how he can get out. The only problem is he's already pled guilty. He wants to take a plea deal, but his lawyer is just like, you can't do that. Like, you have to have some type of reason on why you need to be released. And in order to do that, we have to paint the story that Coogie wasn't a good person. And so Ronnie's very reluctant to go down this route. He was like, I want to pay for my sins. I just want to go see my grandmother, and I really don't want to drag his family into any of this. And so this caused a huge ripple effect for a lot of different characters, for Brandon, for Detective Cruz, and also too for Kevin, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I thought it was interesting to see how reluctant he was. But his lawyers, even for his lawyer that we see at the beginning, to even the black woman who was kind of this lawyer who gets everyone off, how she's asking him all these questions and just like, hey, like, he has a arrest record. We need to use this. So what you trying to do? And so she was like, you're drunk. She was like, and she asked him, did you kill him? And he was like, yes. And she's like, good. And I was like, girl, how is that good? And she was like, well, at least I know that you're honest with me. And, you know, I have to make sure that I do what I have to do to get you off. And so you're drunk. You can't even recall any of these dates. You were probably under the influence when you gave this confession, which I'm going to have thrown out. And we just need to do everything that we can. So you need to just shut up and let me do my job. It doesn't matter if you're trying to redeem yourself or trying to make sure that you don't drag Coogie's family into this. My job is to take care of you. And that is pretty much what it is to it. And it's kind of like a harsh reality and check as you just see how this is done. Like, people get killed every day. There's black men killing other black men. And this is unfortunately the narrative they see play out over and over again, to where even the lawyers have become desensitized to it. And they also know how to work the loopholes to get their clients, who most of the time are not good people, get them off and basically line their pockets with more money. And so we see that Detective Cruz is kind of being brought in on this as his boss basically tells him what ends up happening and how he needs to make sure that his story is straight, that he has all of his ducks in a row, even though he's beefing with the detective, the woman who is basically handling the crime with Miss Ethel, and they kind of bump heads, but then you see that they try to work together and just find a common understanding between one another. But I also think it's interesting to see kind of how we always have these bad depictions of the police, and then also too how we're not to trust, you know, people who maybe aren't black or are not a part of that neighborhood to really understand what it is to grow up and kind of live in the circumstances that these people are living in, and how we really don't want to trust them, or how maybe they beef with other officers because they might have the same ideals as well, even though they're supposed to be working on the same team. So I think it's nice to kind of see that dynamic between the two of them as they challenge one another to really see what their true intentions are, and if they're really trying to, you know, help the victims, help the families like in this neighborhood. Now, as I said, these implications of Ronnie now trying to get out have a huge impact on Kevin. And so we see that Kevin is still dealing with what has happened of him having to shoot someone, how he's dealing with this, talking to his therapist, his reluctance to actually talk to the therapist, and also to kind of this impact that it's having on his mother, who I think is very interesting in a conversation that she's having with Detective Cruz when he tells her that he needs Kevin to possibly testify, and Kevin is very against this idea. And to even see kind of the conversation that his mom and her girlfriend, are they married? I don't know if they're married or not, but to see them have this conversation, how she knows that the right thing to do is for Kevin to actually testify, but she's worried about her son. And also too, Kevin is struggling with this implication of snitching, which is a conversation that him and Jake are having, as Jake is trying to tell Kevin how good he has it because he has two parents that care about him. He doesn't know his mom. He's only known Reggie to be that caregiver, to be that mother and that father to him, and how he's a part of this life that he really doesn't want to be a part of, but he just has to accept the cards that has been dealt to him. And so we see that even though I thought that after the conversation of Jake talking about how he hates snitches and stuff like that, that Kevin was going to say he didn't want to testify. But as we come to the end of the episode, he tells his moms that, hey, I want to testify. And so I don't know if he was necessarily being truthful or what his thought process was behind that, but to kind of see him having to deal with even thinking of the repercussions of what it means to tell the truth or to try to right a wrong and help bring justice to a family it's a lot for a young kid to really have to deal with, and also to see his mom struggle and say how hard it is raising a young black man and trying to make sure not only that you do the best that you can as a parent, but to make sure that your child makes it to adulthood, and to see how she's breaking down, hearing that her son is struggling with, he's scared that he won't grow up to basically live and fulfill his life. So I think it's a very interesting dynamic that we especially see with the young kids, and even with Jake as he's starting this snack business, which was a good idea, okay, because I should have started a snack business. I know my mama used to do that at work, but I kind of like the interaction that him and Reggie had when he tell him, like, sir, why are you making this hard on yourself? $1 for everything. Make sure that you upsell everything and that you get your coins, okay? So, and then I like that Reggie checked him about his homework, even though Reggie was coming from a place like, I'm not trying to go to jail because you don't want to do your homework, sir. So get your life together. But I do like that he's telling him, like, hey, you can hustle on the side and get your money, but you need to make sure that you're doing your school, doing the bare minimum to make sure that you can finish and we ain't got no problems. Now, I do want to talk about, I guess we got to talk about Emmett. So Emmett is hustling in different ways, okay, y'all? So we saw that he finally went to his dad's because he had nowhere else to stay. And I think that his whole storyline of staying with his dad is very interesting because, you know, he goes to his dad as a last resort. He really doesn't have any type of relationship with his father, even though his dad tells him, like, you live 5 minutes away, but you've never come to me before, so you must have really, you know, been struggling. And then he kind of gets on him about his relationships and the dynamics that he has between his baby mamas and his children. And it kind of causes Emmett to reflect on his relationship that he has with his dad, and how as he's sitting here and he sees his dad making lunches and making sure he's basically being the father of the year, which I think is so great that they showcase this on the Shy, because we do need more positive images of black men taking care of their kids, being an active place, having an active role in their child's lives and helping to raise them. And so Emmett kind of gets this overview, like the outside looking in, on how his other siblings were kind of given the luxury of having their dad in their lives, and he wasn't given that luxury. And so we see as he's learning the story, obviously Emmett, the apple don't fall too far from the tree, because his daddy was a player too. He got his old baby mama and the new baby mama, like, they used to be booze and then now they booze, and he got him fired and all this stuff. And so he's showing him how his life was just as chaotic as Emmett's life was, but because he realized that he was such a horrible dad to Emmett, and kind of how we kind of in this society, for some reason, men feel as though as long as I'm providing monetary needs to my kids, I'm basically a father. And that's not true, because it's not just about paying your child support. It's about actually being there to help your children, teach them lessons, watch them grow up, instill in them, you know, how the proper way to walk through life. And so he saw how horrible of a father he was to Emmett, and we see Emmett kind of have this outburst at dinner, and then he goes and talks to him on the porch and basically tells him, like, you still have time to be a good father, to establish relationships with all of your baby mamas, to make things right, to be in your child's life. And I think it's so important to see images like that, and to see how, as a father, Emmett's dad realizes how he might have rubbed off on his child by not being in his life, that he's now repeating the same mistakes that he made when Emmett was a young kid. And so to see that interaction with them, even when he was like, hey, can you just hold the beer like all the dads do on TV when they having like a serious conversation, I thought it was really cool to watch. And it's just one of the reasons why I just love The Chi so much, instilling these positive images while also trying to break down stereotypes, or to show that there's still redemption that is possible. You still can make a change. It's never too late to be a better person. And that's kind of what we see through the course of all these different characters as they're hustling to try to make a better life, or just go down a different path to basically improve their lives. And so also too, we see there's this kind of tension with Brandon and Jerrika, because Jerrika's trying to close this deal with one of her family's, her mom and dad's friends, who's building a condominium. She wants to get the business because it would be a huge cash cow for her. And so we see that Jerrika drags Brandon to one of their fundraisers. Brandon's totally against it because he's like, I do not like being around your bougie family or their bougie friends. And we see that he does enough to like kind of appease Jerrika, and they're kind of having this conversation with her parents, and we see Brandon sees one of his friends that he used to work with in culinary school. He walks off, and then we see that Jerrika's parents still does not approve of Brandon because he's a cook, and they're just like, we did not send you to Spelman to do all these things to basically end up with just a regular cook. To them, he's still not good enough for their daughter. And so we kind of see, as even though as Black people we see through her parents, and also too we see through this new business venture that Jerrika is trying to close, that even though these people have come from the hood or they've made a better way for themselves, it almost seems that they've forgotten where they came from, they've forgotten about their people, and they really look down at them because of where they're from, and not to realize the good things that they're doing, trying to set themselves on a better path. And so we kind of get a bigger glimpse into this as she's having a conversation, doing her pitch. And she basically says that she wants to rope off a couple of condos for low-income housing, and how the lady's just like, hey, I used to be just like you. They don't do nothing but mess up business. They make me lose money. I don't want no parts of that. And then Jerrika kind of conforms to just like, well, you know, I was just saying that just to try to appease you, but if that's not what you want to do, don't worry about it. And we see that they have a dinner where Brandon is cooking, and he basically helps smooth her client for her, and she closes the deal. But she makes a comment to whereas she talks about how Jerrika's parents didn't look at Brandon the same way that she sees him now that she's had dinner with them. And then he kind of gets back into like, this is why I don't like your parents. I don't like people like this, because they totally look down at people, not really understanding where they come from. So I just love how we kind of look at these different classes. We look at the people who have really, you know, created some type of generational wealth, not only for them, but now for their children. And we see these different levels, whether it's Jerrika, her parents, and then even too, when we look at Dadu or whatever his name was, how now, you know, he used to be who Reggie was, and now he's living this grand life where he doesn't have to necessarily go kill people, rob people, and do all of this. He's kind of really hands off, and they just bring the money to him. So I think it's interesting to see how people's hustles are at different levels in their lives, and kind of different ways on how they're trying to basically just get their money the best way that they can. But I think that's pretty much everything that really happened. I'm very interested to see the storyline, what is happening, what's the connection with Miss Ethel. Is there going to be a connection with necessarily the people who tried to evict Miss Ethel to the 63rd Street mob? Maybe they hired them to be muscle for people who said they didn't want to move out, and so basically they hired them to basically cause some type of crime to happen to scare people into moving out one way or another. I don't know if that's necessarily what's going to happen, but I'm very interested to see what the connection is, and how Dadu, or I hope I'm saying his name right, how what he has to bring to the table now that we've established this new captain of this gang. But, oh, we gotta get on Emmett one more time, y'all, because Emmett hustling too. So Emmett and Amir, it's nice to see Amir back. Hey, I saw you, you know, how they did you dirty on how to get away with murder. But he's back. He's trying to figure out how they can, like, basically make some coins. And so they decided to start a weed business, which is probably the best idea that Emmett has ever came up with, especially since he didn't slept with enough women, seen enough weaves to know what women want, what they don't want, and what it needs to look like. So I'm actually excited for their business venture. They said, forget them sneakers, this weed business, that's where the money's at. And I was like, Emmett, you finally got a good idea. But we see that he's still struggling with his baby mama because she had him served at the store, and basically he has to start paying child support to then be eligible to go to court to then get a hearing to basically determine whether or not he would have visitation. It's just so crazy how immature he is, and how he's still living with this thing like, so I got to pay money to see my child. Sir, you should be taking care of your child. Like, we wouldn't even be in all of this if you were doing that. So I really hope that we see an arc of maturity of how this conversation is kind of him interacting with his father, helps him just be a better father to his kids, y'all. Just, Lord, just take the wheel. But those are pretty much my thoughts on The Chi Season 2, Episode 2. Every day I'm hustling. As always, my name is Sharona from Pair Weights, and if you like what you saw today, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and make sure you hit that notification bell, and I will see you soon.